Hello, hello, blissful parents. Michelle Abraham here, your host. I am super excited. I have a really exciting guest here today. I've got Stephen Lentz here with me today. And what's cool about Stephen is that I was a podcast guest on his show, Subject to Change, not that long ago. And we got to talking about parenting. And Stephen is a parent and a firefighter, EMT, and entrepreneur, father of two. And he mentioned to me that he has written this book all about board games, is the guide to board gaming, which is super cool. And I was like, well, we got to bring you on Blissful Parenting and talk about that. So, Stephen, welcome to Blissful Parenting.
Oh, Michelle, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here and be able to chat with you and talk to your audience a little bit.
You're welcome. Well, I think it's really cool that you've written a book. I mean, we live like where our family was like our summer vacation home. And so in the summer vacation home that's off the grid, obviously there was a lot of board games and a lot of games that happen in this house. So our family is all about games. And so it's nice to see another family that is also all about games. And it's kind of interesting how games have kind of like board games and like card games and things that kind of like aren't really a thing anymore in a lot of families. So share with us, like, what's your passion about with board games?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing board games, right? Like when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, we would have family game night. Actually, it started before then. But every Friday night was family game night, and we would play Monopoly, Risk, and Acquire. And Monopoly quickly dropped off because it was just like, it's a mousetrap. You roll your dice, you move your mouse, you buy the property you land on, and you just like do that for 5 hours and you're done. But the more strategy games we'd play. And then one night, I think it was like 7 or something. I was sleeping and my parents walked in and I was in my sleep going, roll a 6, roll a 6. And my parents were like, oh my gosh, we're ruining this kid. We need to stop playing Risk and like, we need to tone this down a little bit. And I just like, man, why aren't we like playing these games anymore? Like, oh, we're trying something different. So we go to like Yahtzee and Scrabble and these other, different ones. But we came back to the strategy games later. But I've always enjoyed board games. They've always been a part of like my growing up. And I grew up military. So we moved around every 2 to 4 years. And having a family game night was one of those few things that was like a regular thing I could count on, regardless of if I was in Arizona or Ohio or New York or wherever it was that I was living at the time. Like, I knew that this was something that I had. And being an adult now, like I still love games. I'll play any video game you give me. I love board games. Like that's my preferred modality of gaming. And I have some game groups that I go play with, but like I have games on my shelf that I'm waiting for my kids to get old enough to play. And I've been saving them like, oh, I hope they like this game. I can't wait to play with them. And, getting your 5-year-old to play a heavy strategy game just usually doesn't work out very well. I was like, how do I bridge the gap of these like, and I feel bad saying that, but like these super lame kid games to like the fun thinking games that games have evolved into. And like board games have changed significantly from, 20, 30 years ago from when I started playing games to today. And it's, there's games of all skill ranges and ages. And I mean, it's like going out to eat, right? You have American cuisine, like hot dogs and hamburgers, and you can go Vietnamese, you can get Thai food or Japanese food. Like you have a smorgasbord, like there's a food for any type of person out there. And the same now is true for games, where before you had, a couple games to choose from, but now it's like, you like strategy? Cool. You like deck building or drafting or dudes on a map where you're like claiming resources and moving people around, like negotiation, party, like you name a genre or an interest or any sort of thing, and you're going to find a type of game that you're going to enjoy because it's not necessarily about like winning, which we can get into like playing to win, but it's about enjoying what you're doing with people that you're doing it with.
Yeah, and I think it's that experience of like family bonding, like over a game is always great. I mean, we had 3 generations of people usually at a table playing a game together, whether it's like a dice game or we have one called Mexican Train or ones that the kids could play, but the grandparents
Classic
could play
dominoes.
too. And like, yeah, something that's like really fun for everyone to do. And what I didn't mention when I was introducing your book, it's like your book's called The Guide to Board Gaming, but it's like getting beyond Candyland. And I love that because that's what you're saying. There's lots of different strategies of, just the typical game that comes to mind first. And I mean, how many variations of Monopoly I have in my house is probably like 6 because you have like the city one, the Disney one, the
The
whatever.
Star Wars
I'm
one,
like, this is the
yeah.
same game. So a couple of the games that are like, so I have 7 and 10-year olds,
Mhm.
boy and girl. And so some of the games that are really hot in our house right now one's called it's a long one. It's pizza, cat, goat, cheese, pizza, or pizza, no, cat, cat, cat goat, cheese, pizza game. Have you heard of that one?
I have not.
Oh my gosh, that one's fun because it's like you got to keep saying those names. You put
Uh,
a card down, you say like pizza. And if you're putting the card down as you're saying pizza and you happen to have a pizza card, then everyone slaps in. It's like playing like Snap. And everyone
mhm.
slaps their hands in. And so that one's really fun for like the younger kids because they can get it. And there's
Mhm.
one same one called avocado something, and it's the same sort of thing where it's like you're counting with the avocados at the numbers, and if you say the number and the number goes on the card at the same time, then everyone slaps it and the last person to put their hand in loses or whatever. And so those ones are really fun for like the younger ones. Any good games in your house these days?
Yeah. I mean, you're just like unlocking memories for me. I think it's very similar to spoons, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
But I mean, we started out with, and again, like, we had like the go fish and the,
Mhm.
hoot owl hoot, where
Old
you
maid.
draw old
Yeah.
maid, right? Like you draw a card and like, oh, it's yellow. I move on to the yellow spot, and you draw a card. And I'm like, oh, blue. You move to the blue spot, right? Like the super, super simple ones. But
Sorry,
my
that
eight,
was a good one. That was the younger kids like sorry, right? With the different
hmm
colors. And
yeah, sorry,
that's
sorry is a good classic, right? Like there's nothing wrong with like the simple classic games. But I get like, I love like the intricate strategy, and so that's my goal, is to like bring my kids past the candy lands and those ones. So right now, my 8-year-old, he's playing X-wing minis with me, which is like a 3D dog fighting miniatures game where you like you make your Star Wars list of like ships, and you fight each other with maneuvers and stuff. It's really cool. It's, spatial and tactile and strategy. But I mean, he can play pretty much almost any game that I have been saving for, when he's 14, 15, 16, just because kids are smart and we don't give them the credit, right? The box will be like, oh, for 14 plus. I'm like, I know my 8-year-old can like figure this out. If I'm patient with him and we go through it a couple times, like
Yeah.
he can absolutely get this. But my 5-year-old, and the difference is attention span and how they interact with games.
Hmm.
She's the like 10-minute game, she's done.
Hmm.
Right. So it's like your Sorry and your Suro.
Yeah.
Um, Suro is great for like the short attention span, or like getting a game to the table that is quick to put out, quick to put away. Are you familiar with it?
No, I don't know that. How do you spell that one?
TSURO.
TSURO. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I think the box is like, it's a red and beige box with like
Again.
a dragon on it or something. But it's a tile laying game. And so you have a board, and you each have 3 tiles, and you put a tile down and you drop a tile, right? It's like, it's as simple as it gets. And on the tile has paths that go to the different, spots on it, and you just move your person. So the goal is to be the last person on the map, because all roads lead off the map. And so if you end up, getting pushed off, and you're done. It's a like 5 to 8 minute elimination game, essentially. If you
Mhm.
just, you put your tile down to it, but it's good for her because she can follow it.
Yeah.
Or like Ticket to Ride. There's Days of Wonder makes very good games that are simple. So it's your Ticket to Ride, Small World, Cargo Noir. They've got a whole host of games. They're great. The artwork is beautiful. They do a phenomenal job with the artwork, and it's a pleasure to look at the games when you play them.
No, that's
Um,
cool. Yeah,
yeah, they're so good.
we have a card version of the Zero, but it's called Saboteur. Where it's like similar
Mhm.
sort of thing. It's like with cars and they're like miners and they're trying to get through a tunnel and someone is trying to knock them off by tricking them as to which way the tunnel goes. So it's kind of like that. It's like almost like the next strategy level up. So then it's like there's a little bit of strategy involved in that one. That was cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, and like I realized I need to treat my daughter differently than my 8-year-old, because at 5, like he was, able to start playing these longer games. Like, it'd be a one-off of just, he's got like, sit down for an hour and a half to play a strategy game with me. And then after that, he'll be good for like 40 minutes next time he plays it. But he could like play through and get to the game. Whereas my daughter is like, if it's not like stimulating right now, I'm out. Like she's gone. So we have Tiny Epic Dinosaurs, which is the Tiny Epic games are great. They're, short and they're quick. But she played it through all the way the first time with us, I was surprised. And like she loves dinosaurs, which is, if you can get thematically with your kids, that they'll be into it. But now she doesn't play the game with us. She just takes all the dinosaur pieces and she's the dino rancher. And then when someone like gets a dino, they have to request it from her and then she like ships it off to them. And so you get a special line like, here, Viv, I have an order for you. And she'll look at the dinosaur card and be like, this is your dinosaur. And she'll pass it back, or we'll like give her the dice tower and roll the dice and she'll roll for us whenever that happens. But like we find other ways to get her involved in the game playing, even though she's not like an active participant within that anymore of the actual game itself. But she wants to be part of it. And we want her to, be part of it as well. And I think down the line, like maybe she'll find a game or something that she enjoys that she wants to do. But I mean, we can go like deep game philosophy of like, how your kids interact with and getting into it, but doing what's right for the kid instead of like pressuring like, hey, you need to play the game
this way,
right.
That's what the rules say. Yeah.
Right. Like figuring out how she can be a part of it. Or when we play Ticket to Ride, she has her own trains. She plays on the board. She puts her stuff out, but she's not actually like part of the game. She's just building trains and we build around her, and she understands she has to share tracks if like we need those tracks to play on, but we find ways to incorporate her and she enjoys it, even though she's not, playing the game the right way or whatever. So I think I like deviated a long time from your question, but
no, it was great. I think it's more of a conversation about like what cool games are happening. And I think that's great. We have like a little bit of generational stuff going on where it's like, the older generation has to play by the rules and we cannot deviate from the rules. So I, as a parent, trying to adapt to like letting the kids play just like you were saying, right? Let them still be involved and they play in their own way until they're old enough to take it on. And one of the games that we grew up playing a lot that I really liked was Yahtzee. And it's funny how you started this whole conversation about your parents getting worried about you because you were talking about rolling a 6 in your sleeve. My brother also, when we were camping, would yell Yahtzee in the middle of the night. So it's interesting that those games like really like they always say like whatever you put in your brain before you go to bed like is what helps like formulate how you sleep, right? So playing those strategy games right before bed is going to give some kids all sorts of crazy wild dreams.
Yeah, I think I actually, one of the chapters in my book is called like a rule is to break or something like that, going back to like the generational thing of you have to play by the rules. And it's kind of like, what is the outcome that we're going for now? Because a big part of why I play with my kids and like my 8-year-old, I don't let him win all the time. Like I believe in absolutely crushing his spirit every now and then and just demoralizing him, because he needs to learn how to lose as well, right? Like he needs to learn how to win and be a good winner when he wins, and he needs to learn how to lose and be a good winner when he loses. But I don't want the victory condition of the game to be why he plays. Right? Because if you only play to win, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Right? Like, I'm only going to have fun if I get first place. Well, any sports athlete will tell you that is a sure way to failure and depression and anxiety. Like, if you want to suck the joy out of something, like make winning the condition of having fun. Right. And so when it comes to board games, that's my approach is like, hey, like we're going to do it so we're having fun. And like he might be disappointed about losing. I'm like, hey, I get it. Right. Like you wanted to win and we all want to win. But did you have a good time? He'll tell me like, yeah, I did have a good time. I was like, okay, well, was this good then? And it's like, yeah, it was good. I'm like, okay. He was like, you want to play again? He goes, yeah, let's play again. I'm like, cool. All right. Like navigating that winning and losing thing, but also like, if a rule in a game doesn't work for your family, you don't have to play it. Right? Like just because the board maker is like, this is my vision for the game of how it works out, and like you shouldn't do this. So what? Right? Like they're not in your family unit, like looking over your shoulder, being like, oh, I'm gonna, come from Milton Bradley's and spank you because you did this wrong. Like,
But
I think Monopoly, like everyone put $200 in the like free parking or something, and you land on it and get like, I don't think that's in the rules. I think that's a house rule that like everyone adopted. But like, and so when it comes to playing games with your kids, it's okay to be flexible and lenient and be like, you know what, we're just gonna skip like this other half of the game. Like maybe we'll just do this part, or maybe playing a more complicated game just looks like we pull it out and the kids play with half the rules because attention spans and fun and learning. And my kid can't stand it if we pull out a game that I haven't played in like 5 years. I'm like, hey, but I need to read the rule. Like I need to freshen up as we're learning this up. And I'm trying to like figure out the setup and stuff. And I know that I'm like, I can watch in his eyes, I'm just losing him. I'm like, I gotta like figure this out. But if I pull it out, I'm like, hey man, like I don't know if we're gonna do it all the correct way, but I can get us started and we can play and we'll just have fun and like we'll figure it out as we go.
yeah,
Like that works really well. And yes, I'm not maybe doing it necessarily correct.
right.
That doesn't matter because the goal isn't to play correct, just like the goal isn't to win. The goal is to have fun. And
Yeah.
in the end, this is why I wrote that book, is like I want to help families figure out how to play with their kids and how to nurture them and grow and get them past Candyland, right? Because everything has a shelf life. And Candyland is fun the first 50 times you play it, but you kind of want to graduate and do something different after a while.
For sure.
But if you don't know the next steps, it's hard to get there.
Yeah. And I also think too, like we're competing with a lot of like screen time these days too. And so enticing the kids back to a puzzle or a board game or something like that. I think I love the idea of how your family was making it like game night. And this is what we do. We do game night and we do it together as a family. And and you can always rotate different games based on who's playing. And, so that's, the younger ones get some a good game time in and the older ones too. But, it's hard to engage everyone through the whole thing. We do have this one game called Canasta. I don't know if you ever played it. It's a card game. Canasta has got strategy. It's complicated. It's a lot. My father-in-law gets a bit cranky when he doesn't win it, but it's something that like it can be called canasti. Like if you're not careful, the kids have like started to learn it, and they really love the strategy of it too. So I love finding games like that everyone seems to really enjoy and like can make it work for them. And there's not that many games we found so far that works for all three generations, but that is one that has been pretty good so far.
Yeah. And I mean, depending on how many people you're playing with, I mean, I can help you find some recommendations for good games as well. But like the 4-player games, if it's like you and a couple kids, or like I forget how many kids you have.
2.
2. Okay, yeah, perfect. So I mean, like doing 500 or spades or hearts, like the trick scoring games where you're on teams is super fun. And like they're not that difficult, but it brings in that like competitiveness, but also teamwork. And like the old fashioned card games have really dropped off as far as like mass people playing them, but they're still super fun.
Yeah, they're there. They're good for sure, especially if you can remember some good ones. Like there's war or speed or like spit or like some of those
euchre ones. Or
yeah, some of those ones are really good. I don't know about cheat. That one's a bit bad because you're hiding cards everywhere. That always gets complicated. One game that we really fell in love with last summer, we had my nephews who are a little bit older. They're 14. They came and played with, I think it was more appropriate for my son who's around 10 to play with them and the adults. Rather, my daughter was a little bit young for it still, but it's called Code Names. Have you ever played that game?
Code Names is a great party game.
Yeah, really good party game.
Yeah. If you like kind of like Guess Who, there's a bigger, like you can make it party game type Guess Who, but Dinosaur Tea Party, I think is what it's called. I think it is. The artwork's phenomenal, but like you're guessing, like there's all these different dinosaurs and they have like hats or pets or joy or food or tea or like,
cool.
Like, is your dinosaur in the orange room? They're like, yes or no. And you move your tile up and it's a little tea bag that's got like it's a gorgeous game, but it's one of those like, who done it type of things. And it's the first to guess 3 dinosaurs wins.
Yeah.
It's like Guess Who, but way better.
Cool. My kids really love Clue too. That was one, like, it's been interesting. Costco just over the last couple of years have like come out with these games. I don't know about in the US, but in Canada, they've kind of recreated, or a company has recreated like the traditional games like Clue
Mhm.
and Monopoly and things like that. And they've built them into these like beautiful, thick, like wooden
Yeah.
kind of games, and they're really
Mhm.
gorgeous. We had a lot of fun playing Clue with those ones because our old Clue is like falling apart and missing pieces and stuff. So it was nice to play Clue again.
If you like Clue, you would probably there's one from Days of Wonder, and it's a train game. And I'm going to apologize because I don't remember the name of it. But if you look on like I think the Days of Wonder website, you
Mhm.
should be able to find it. But it's a train game and it's a whodunit and it's very Clue and you move from like train car to train car. But there's
Okay.
also a time element, and so partway
Mhm.
through it does it. But you're trying to figure out like which passenger did it and which car with which item, and it's like I say this with a bunch of games, but it's like Clue but better.
Yeah, that's
It's
cool.
it's very fun and it's a great whodunit.
So
But
you have a lot of experience with a lot of different games. Where do you find about new games? Is it usually word of mouth, or is it do you go somewhere particularly like online to look at what games are good?
yeah, I mean, I I
Well, you
when I
wrote a
got
book
married,
about
uh,
it,
yeah,
so.
but it's not about like the game. But when I got married, my wife was like, "Hey, you have to like." There's a new rule in this house, and you're only allowed to buy one board game a month. And I was like, "No, like, I'm a board game addict. I love playing them." And so I would go to your friendly local game store. It's FLGS. If you're on social media and someone says that, that's what that means. Friendly local game store. But we've got a couple down here, and they're phenomenal. There's just games everywhere, and I'll walk through their new arrivals and what they're playing. The staff has notes, and a lot of them have like open games you can go and try and play within there, and then put them back in. It's called like a game
Oh,
library, so you don't have to buy a game to try it. Be like, who wants to spend $60? Be like, actually, I hated that game.
yeah.
Like, but a lot of them have libraries. You can pull the game out and like learn it and be like, oh, this actually is cool. Like, I like this. And I've
Well,
played enough now that I know, like, I have a really good idea when I see a game and I can like look at the components and read about it. And I'll go onto boardgamegeek.com and
mhm.
like read some reviews and like how people talk about it. And I know like some reviewers like these types of games and some like those types. And I'd be like, okay, this makes sense. Like he's biased towards this. He's going to like this. And I know that I'm not going to really care for it. So I'll move on. Or
Mhm.
inversely, be like, oh, this guy likes the same games I do.
Yeah.
He likes this for these reasons. That's why I like these types of games. Like I know I'm going to enjoy this. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of different ways to find it. Like again, local game stores. There's a bunch of social media groups that talk about games, and people are always like, "Hey, I like these 5 games. Does anyone have a recommendation?" And then there'll be like 1,000 comments. People like, "Have you tried, Gloomhaven or Madara or tic tac toe or whatever it is?" Right? Like people tell you and give their own board game recommendations, and I mean, there's a wealth of information to find out anything. Again, like there is a treat for any palate when it comes to the board game community, and
Mhm.
the people are more than happy to help you find yours.
That's awesome. I really like the games that I challenge the kids to like think, and like it either requires a little bit of like either math or like critical thinking or like something so that it challenges their brains and it challenges
Mm-hmm.
them. But aside from like the game itself, I think what you're saying is so right. There's so many other side benefits of like playing games together as a family.
Yeah.
And what's that saying? Like what families that play together stay together, right? Goes to the board games, and I think having that like technology free like time together is really
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah. And I mean, I want to go back to this, and I mean, perfect segue going back to, but you'd mentioned the screen time thing,
Mhm.
right? And I remember when I was growing up, like I was in the era of Super Nintendo and PlayStation and N64 and, playing GoldenEye, and like I wanted to play my video games. But even though I wanted to play those, like there's a part of like the human being within me that's like, I want connection with my family. And even if I'm going to like pitch a fit and be like, board games, I want to just play my video game or be on my iPad, right? Like I know iPads didn't exist back then, but putting it to nowadays, right? Kids like throwing a stink about not being on their phone, but there is that like human connection that is like, I want to be part of my family. Like
Mhm.
I want this quality time. And yes, there may be that initial resistance, but when you are intentional with it and you do it correctly, like you might have a few times where it's resistive, but once you get through to like feeding and nurturing that human element that is desiring the familial place, like it's a win, and you're gonna like move past that. but I feel like a lot of times we hit that initial resistance and we give up,
Mm.
right? They don't like it. Like they don't like, they're not going to care. It's going to ruin it for everyone. They can just do their own thing, right? I'm just going to give in because it's going to be easier.
Yeah.
But like, that's not really what anyone really wants, right? Like we forget when they're little kids that their job is to push the boundaries and find out where we're going to tell them no. Right? Like that's what little kids do to you. If
Yeah.
anyone's listening and hasn't had a little kid, like they will drive you crazy and they will like, you'll be like, hey man, don't touch that, right? Like that's not for playing. And they'll look you dead in the eye and their hand will come up and they'll push it over and you're like, but that's their job though, is their job is to push us and make us be the adult. And it can be hard when they get older and they, throw a stink and have an attitude and have their own devices and, want to shut you out. But deep down, regardless of age, we all have that. I want to be a part of my family and have them, like, I want to have a place with them and I want to be accepted and be loved. And when the group is doing this thing, even if they're sitting outside, like being in the room with them, part of it makes a big difference. And as they see everyone having fun, they're going to naturally want to join in. Right? They don't want to miss out. And so it's getting past that like initial screen time pushback to being like, hey, like, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference.
I saw a girl in her, like, I would say 20s, mid-20s on TikTok just recently. And she was doing a TikTok with her parents. And what they were talking about is that they used to do this thing when she was in her teens and like young adult age. And she is that her parents would make this thing on Saturday night and it would be called the feast. And so her dad was talking about how he cooked this big feast and they'd invite anyone they wanted and they would have this feast together and they'd have conversations and all this. And they'd go into then playing games afterwards. And she said her mom would like read a book too. And she's like in their 20s and teens, like these boys and girls would come over and they would just love it. And it was like, it was the favorite thing. So what they were trying to do is make it so good and so much fun that they didn't want to go out and just hang out on the street, that this was so much better a place to be. And I think they really, by the sounds of it, achieved this because they're talking about it and they did it for years. And the parents were just saying, like, I don't care how much the food costs. It was just like so awesome having like, 10, 15 like teenagers hanging out, having a good time on a Saturday night at the house and playing games and, having some good food. And that was so cool.
I want to go. I want them to host the feast.
I know, right? I was like, that's such a good idea. Like, I want to be that host too. What a great place. Like, I think that's the thing. Kids go out and wander around, get in trouble because they don't have anything else to do. They don't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah. I mean, I was a good kid, not necessarily because I was a good kid, but because I didn't have any other options to be.
And you were military. Otherwise, the
consequences
were really hard.
Yeah, it was pretty strict. Let's be honest here. I was like, if you go to jail, don't call me. I was like, oh, dear Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, we go out and we play Dance Dance Revolution and watch Smallville together. It was like, everyone was like, this guy is lame, boo. But like, it's you just want to be with friends and hang out and enjoy it. And if you can make your home that place for your kids,
like a safe environment,
that's where they're going to want to be.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I'm gonna reinstate game night in our family. I like this. It's a good idea. We do it when everyone's up at our place in the summer.
That's fun, right? Like,
yeah. Sorry, a little bit of a delay there. So go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, it's game night it's one of those things again, like getting past that initial. Every time there's something new, there's that like initial pushback, right? But I think when you approach it from like, we're gonna make it so fun for everyone, it's gonna be a win. And making it a regular thing, like your kids are gonna be excited about it, and it's a great opportunity to try new games and try new things and really figure out again like what people like to play, because again, board game has gotten so broad and so many options. Like it's exciting thinking about like, oh, like maybe they like strategy games or, and like matching games to personalities or like stressfulness, right? Like there's one game, it's a 2-player game. If you ever have time, like with like you and one of your kids, if you do like a mom and son date or something like that. And like, there's one called Scotland Yard. And the whole time, one person's Mr. X, who's mostly invisible on the map and moves around, and the other person is the detectives, and they chase after and try to catch him. And it's touted as like the 2 to 5 player game, but it works best 1v1 because it essentially is like one person tells everyone else what to do on the other side. Mm-hmm. So when one person controls all of them, it works better. But the whole time as Mr. X, you're like sweating, like they're on to me, like they're about to get me any minute. And as the detectives, you're sweating the whole time, be like, Mr. X can be anywhere. I have no idea where he is. Cool. The most stressful game I've ever played, but it's fun, right? And so like you can figure out, and match games to personalities and stuff. And as you learn what your kids enjoy and don't enjoy, like you can upgrade your gaming experience and learning. Like it's so easy to elevate board games from where they were and what you're used to. Mm-hmm. And not that there's anything wrong with the tried and true classics, right? Like if you like Yahtzee and Risk, and or Scrabble and Rummy Cube, and that's what you play, like that's great. Like my wife and I still play Rummy Cube every now and then together.
Yeah, we play Rummy Cube all the time.
Yeah, we pull it out. It's fun. There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah. But it's also fun to pull out like, super obscure games that really just burn your brain, and this is just a whole different experience. So you find what works for you and your family, and you make that work.
Yeah, I love it. Such a good reminder to get back to the board games. And actually, I like the idea of like maybe thinking of like everyone pick one and they bring one to the game night. Like you decide all week which one you want to play, and then we have a chance to play something that everyone has like had an opportunity to think about. I think that's kind of a cool way of doing it. What's your favorite all-time game ever?
That is very difficult because it changes. Right? Like just we as people evolve and we change, right? Like I'm not the same person I was 15 years ago. And if I was, that'd be a bad sign, right? Like, and through my progression, like there's been lots of games. It's like, this game is the best ever.
Yeah.
It's like Battletech or Rail Baron or Risk or Acquire. And now I really like different like dungeon crawls and super deep strategy games. Or the X-Wing minis with my kid. Or like, I can't just be like, yeah, this is the best game. Right? It's kind of like, what do you like better, apples or oranges or kiwis or Chinese food? Like, which one's the best food ever? I'm like, what am I hungry for?
All day.
Yeah. Right? Like, there are highlights within each category, but as far as like what's the best, I don't think it's a fair comparison. And they're made differently for different people.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think that's good. That's a great answer. It does evolve over time. I still have this spot in my heart for categories. I don't know why. I'm really excited.
No shame there. It's fine.
I'm really excited to get my kids to like categories because it will really help with their spelling, right? Ulterior motive to bring that one to game night, I think.
Have you heard of Balderdash?
Yes.
Have you played Balderdash?
No. Seems like an old game, but I've never played it.
It is an old game. It is phenomenal. It would be, I think, a great addition to your game nights for all generations.
Nice.
And it's been a long time, but if I remember correctly, like it's kind of like apples to apples with the judge, a person like reading the stuff.
Yeah.
But I like it so much better because what happens is that they have like the one person who has it is reading it off or whatever, and they have like an acronym, right? And then everyone has to guess what the acronym stands for. And so everyone writes in their version of what it is, then submits it. But the one person who knows it has the correct answer. Nice. And so the goal then is to like get a consensus to have everyone vote for either the correct answer or the incorrect answer. And everyone's trying to pitch their own because the more people that vote for yours, like you get points. Right. So it's this fun thing of like, just like ridiculousness of people just making up stuff because no one knows what any of these things mean or, different phrases and stuff like that. So it's spans the generation gap and is very fun and creative.
That's cool. I have to remember that one and go back to it for sure. Well, this has been awesome chat about not video games, but board games.
We can talk about those too.
Games in general, but specifically board games and card games. And I want to challenge our blissful parents out there to, think about having a game night in their house. As your book, really helps people kind of figure out which ones work for them and to help raise like compassionate, critical thinkers and leaders. And, I love what you were saying about helping them lose, but also helping them win. Because I think all those strategies and um, all those things that you learn when playing board games and cooperation and all that kind of stuff just transfers over to everyday life in such a fabulous way. Any last words of advice for our blissful parents out there?
Yeah. If you're thinking about doing this with your kids, like my book is made for parents with young kids, right? Like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like the young formative. I play Candyland or I play Shoots and Ladders, and I'd like to make this something that we continue to do as a family. But there's also relevant parts in it for kids that are 14, 15, 16 that never had a background in playing board games or never learned how to lose or how to win, or like understanding why games are important to play as a family, right? So this is a book for you to read, not to like give to your kid to be like, hey, here, read this so we can play games, but understanding how to approach a game and how to be able to unlock and make gaming easy for your family, I think is important, right? And part of that, and it goes in the book a bit, but like setting the expectation, right? If you have young kids, don't expect to play this game the way the game is made to be played.
By the rules.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, by the rules. And like we have to play the entire game, right? There's like, we have that compulsion for completion of like, I started this, I need to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, we played this for 15 minutes and, little Timmy's tuckered out and like we're losing them. It's okay to fold it up and come back another time. Mm-hmm. Right? Like we can shift into another type of game or a different family activity. Like just because you start this doesn't mean that you're locked into it. And there's a lot of compassion and grace that goes into teaching your kids how to play board games that we don't inherently think about, because games come with rules. And 99% of the time we like to abide by rules because it gives us as adults a safe place to be in. Mm. But the goal is to make board games a safe place for your kids, and not just safe, but fun and enjoyable. So molding that, like taking the game framework and molding it to your kids, will change how they interact with and bring them back to the table again for more, because it was a safe place for them, but also fun for everyone. So I know that was probably like a little woo woo and generic, but
it was making me think.
I mean, I could chat game philosophy for hours with you, but I wrote the book. It wasn't to sell the book. I have no intention of being like, you need to buy the book, but I wrote it because I wanted to remind myself, but also to give it to my kids when they get older and they want to get their kids playing games with them, because it's part of their life and what they do and how we spend family time and they enjoy it. My kid is like, every day he goes, Dad, we're playing X-Wing Minis today. I'm like, no, bud, that's a weekend game. Like the game takes 5 hours to play because we take all day. He goes, okay. Is tomorrow Saturday? I'm like, no, bud. He's like, ah. Like he begs me every day to play games with him, which is exactly what I want. Like I want him to want to play with me. I want to play with him. Like I want that time. And I'm sorry if I'm going way over here. But that's the goal. And so the book is for him when he's an adult and he has his own little kids. He goes, how do I get my kids to play with me? How do I get my kids to want to spend time with me? Right? Like that's important. As a dad, that's what I want. And that's what I want for you. And the you who's listening and watching this, like I want your kids to want to spend time with you and enjoy that. And board games have been that for me. And it's that way now for my family. And I want to help you get there. So feel free to grab it. You don't have to, right? Like listen to the podcast and be like, just approach games with grace and understand that you can break the rules and you can make it fun in different ways from the game and tailor it to your kids, right? That's the biggest thing. Tailor it to your kids, figure out what they like, what they don't like, what they can do, what they can't do, attention spans, like figure out the shortcomings and the strengths of your kids and tailor your experience so that way they feel safe and fun.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, we'll make sure we link the book to the show notes. And I just want to thank you for joining us today. It's been lots of fun. And our listeners can also find you at your digital marketer. I mean, they can find you at your Oslet Traffic business. And so we're going to share with them what the website is and where they can connect with you over there too.
Yeah, I do Ocelot Traffic. It's a digital marketing agency for businesses who want to show up on the first page of the Googler. And I say Googler because I think it's funny.
Like the Googler.
But yeah, like most well, most businesses are like, hey, I Google my name and I show up. I'm like, well, that's cool, but that's a digital business card, right? Like I have to know Bob's Dog Grooming exists to find Bob. But when I'm looking for, dog grooming in Bellevue for a German Shepherd, Bob is invisible, right? And so it's to get you showing up for your services and what you provide, because that's how people interact with a brand that they don't know who you are. So when you want clients coming and chasing you, that's what I help with. Visibility and exposure. So ocelottraffic.com, and there's a link on there to schedule a call and we can chat.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for spending your time with us this afternoon. And blissful parents out there, go challenge you to have a game night this week in your family and report back to us and tell us how it was. So thanks so much, Stephen. It's so great to have you here today. And blissful parents, see you again next week.
Thanks, Michelle.